Okay, so we're going to come to our mat, and we're going to start laying flat on our back. We'll come down, we'll find that small little space between the small of the back and the floor in your mat. Hands to the hips, onto the hip bones, so you can feel the rock of the pelvis, that flexion through the low back as we work into a little bit of our pelvic tilts. On the exhale, we're going to tilt the hips back, imprint and flex the low back against the mat as we drive the shoulders down. There's that curve of the pelvis, the tailbones up towards the ceiling as you work into that C curve and that flexion. And then we articulate all the way through back to that neutral spine. I'm going to move us into extension. So as I move into extension, I'm going to tighten up through upper and middle abdominals so that I can keep the movement just in the small of the back. So there's no flaring of the ribs or arching of the upper back. And we'll curl back. We'll pause at neutral for a moment and then exhale to tilt back. Finding that imprint, that flexion, that C curve in the small of the back. There's some pressure in the feet, so I get the hamstrings to fire, slight pull of the inner thigh. And then we articulate back to center, pause for a breath, and then forward towards the tailbone, tipping the hips forward and down, weighting into the sacrum, the sit bones, the tailbone. Still keeping that active, engaged abdominal wall to prevent us from going too far through the extension motion. And again, we pause at neutral. So kind of find that position. We pause at neutral, we'll pause at flexion. Taking that breath, or even two. And we move back through to that neutral spine. And then heavy towards the tailbone, into that extension. Go through one more. Articulating back. Shoulders are still pulling back and down. We're trying to keep all of the movement from the base of the rib cage down. And finishing into that extension position. And back to neutral. Arms are going to reach up towards the ceiling, reaching long as you set the rib cage and the shoulder blades back and down against your mat. And on the exhale, they lower. We lift the head, neck, and chest, keeping that little gap between the small of the back and your floor, and curling back to our starting position. All the movement is coming from the mid-ribs, folding at the bra line, just below the pecs, at the base of the shoulder blades to draw the chest up and forward. Staying long through the neck and long through the top of the shoulder. And now we're going to take our arms all the way overhead, being mindful not to flare the ribs or arch the back. We reach up overhead and arms flow through back to the side of the hip and thigh as we lift the chest. Try not to create any movement through the small of the back. And last one. Arms will reach back overhead, stretching long as you draw the ribs down, trying to stretch the spine along the floor. Feeling that stretch run up the arms, across the collarbone, through the shoulders. And we'll bring our arms out to our T position, palms up towards the ceiling. Always place your arms just a little bit lower than where you think your T position is to ensure that your shoulders are as far down the back as they can be. And we'll bring our legs to tabletop, drawing through inner thigh. And on the inhale, we'll take our legs, our hips, and our low back over to the right, anchoring that left shoulder blade, base of the shoulder blade. And exhale through to center. Rocking from hip to hip, moving through our spine twist supine. We use our inhale to rotate and twist through the mid-ribs, just like our last chest lift came with that fold just below the pecs and the shoulder blades. We want the same rotation to come through the mid-ribs. Anchoring the shoulder blades, the bottom half of the shoulder blades flat against your mat, being mindful of adding any rib cage flare or overarching the mid or upper back. We're cinching up tight through the mid ribs. As we rock from hip to hip. One more each side. And we'll come back to tabletop. Arms will reach once again back up overhead, and we'll return to our chest lift. Arms flow forward as the head, neck, and chest lifts. And inhale to reset. You can always keep any of the chest lifts out of the movement, working just the arm and the leg position, keeping the core tight, drawing navel to spine. And last two. Nice deep fold at the mid-ribs. We rock back to our start position. Arms reach far overhead as we draw the ribs down. Try to stretch the spine along the mat. And arms will come back down by the side of the hip and thigh. And we'll separate the tabletop position of each leg. And we're going to work our single leg lowers, maintaining that knee bend. We inhale, lowering that right foot towards the mat. And exhale to draw it back up. We'll stay on this right side, keeping that movement of the leg solely in the hip. Drawing the abdominals in, cinching up tight through the mid-ribs, and two more. Taking a breath before you switch, and inhale, left leg lowers, maintaining that knee bend, trying to find the mat with the foot by hinging at the hip, not changing the angle or the position of the knee. Last two. We hold at tabletop. Feel free to rest at any time throughout any of the movements. We'll bring our hands to the knees, folding and lifting, drawing the chest up and forward into our single leg stretch. The right leg reaches out nice and long as you transfer the hands to the opposite knee, and we switch. I like to pull the tabletop leg towards my chest just a little bit for that little extra stretch. Finding that nice deep fold at the mid-ribs, reaching straighter and longer with the leg. One more each side. And we'll return to tabletop, reset shoulders, head and neck. Arms will come out to a T position, palms up towards the ceiling. We'll separate the legs just a little and work into our leg changes. Keeping that knee bend, the right leg lowers for the toes to tap the mat. And we exhale to alternate to the left leg. Working that simultaneous switch from side to side. Drawing the ribs in, keeping the core tight, bracing through the abdominal wall as the leg moves freely at the hip. Two more each side. And we'll draw the knees in towards the chest to stretch and rest. You can add flexion to the low back as you draw the hips up or stay in that neutral spine. Shoulder blades slide back and down. Transitioning to a butterfly pose of the feet and the legs, grabbing onto the shins and the ankles so the knees fall apart. And we'll reset the feet back to the mat. Heels just in line with the sit bones. Fingers are going to interlace. Once we find that neutral spine, bringing our hands behind our head. We'll move back into our chest lift, but we'll add our rotation once we lift into our hold. On the exhale, we fold at the mid-ribs to lift the head, neck, and chest, sliding the shoulders down as we lengthen the neck, resting the head into the hands, and exhale to rotate over towards that right shoulder and back through center. Twisting and shifting over to the left and back to center. Nice and smooth as we glide from side to side. Allowing the chest, the shoulders to twist without changing the spacing between the hips and the rib cage. Legs are stable and steady, holding their strong position squared off. And one more each side. Coming back to center, curling and resetting back to the mat. Arms will return out to that T position, and we'll return our legs to tabletop, drawing in our thighs together, squeezing tight through the knees and ankles. And on the inhale, both legs keeping the knee bend, feet are going to lower towards the mat, and exhale to draw back to tabletop. No need to fully tap the mat with both feet. You want to really check in these first few reps to make sure that the hips and the pelvis aren't twisting or tipping forward, that you're able to maintain that integrity through the spine and that neutral position through the pelvis and the hips. If you feel strong in your stable, neutral position, feel free to work and tease out some more movement. Trying to keep that torque out of the hip and that pressure off your low back. 3 more. Holding at tabletop, our hands come to the knees, and we fold the mid-ribs to lift the head, neck, and chest, holding the chest high. Arms are gonna separate from the knees, palms face away. And we bring our arms overhead, keeping the chest up and lifted, and the arms circle around back to that bent knee. Two more. And upper body resets back to the mat. Bringing the knees to the chest, reaching for the toes and in for the happy baby stretch. Drawing the knees apart, pulling them out past the shoulders. And we'll rock from hip to hip. Centering up, legs return to tabletop, and we'll add their chest lift back. You can keep again once that chest lift out if you'd like. Arms are going to reach forward, palms facing down, and inhale, legs reach forward. And exhale, draw back. Inhale to stretch and lengthen, pressing and reaching the legs out over the mat. Keeping that nice deep fold at the mid-ribs to lift the chest forward and higher. Slight tuck of the chin to take the pressure off of the front of the neck. The farther forward the legs travel, the deeper we pull our abdominals to the back. Last two. Resetting the shoulders, neck, and head back to the mat. We'll bring our arms back to a T position, reset our tabletop, and then we'll stretch and straighten the legs up for the ceiling. Flex the feet, pull the toes back as we flex at the ankle. And we're going to tip from side to side. We inhale, tip the legs to the right and back to center. Tip and twist to the left, lifting the opposite hip. We're twisting and creating that shift, that movement in the mid-ribs, squeezing tight through inner thigh. And one more each side. Bending the knees, placing the feet flat to the mat, working into our figure four stretch. We'll cross that right ankle over the left thigh and allow the knee to twist away, the leg to twist away from the hip, moving the knee away from the chest and the shoulder, creating that movement of the upper leg in the hip. And we'll unlace that right leg. Bringing it to tabletop position, we'll reach it up strong towards the ceiling, pointing the toes. And we're going to inhale to lower and exhale to lift. Teasing out that range of motion, creating a bigger movement if you can. Bringing the leg up towards the ceiling, we'll point the toe and we'll work little clockwise circles. Anchoring the hips, anchoring the shoulder blade as we stir the pot with our foot and leg, and we'll change directions. Stretching and reaching the leg long as we anchor the hip and the shoulders. And we'll bend the right knee. Place the foot back to the mat. Left ankle crosses over the right thigh. And that left knee is going to move away from the chest and the shoulders, twisting the leg and the hip. Two more breaths. Unwinding that left leg, bringing it to tabletop, finding that reset through the spine, and left leg stretches nice and long towards the ceiling, and we inhale to lower. Exhale to flex at the ankle and kick the leg up. Reaching long with the leg. Keeping the movement in the hip, trying not to add any flexion to the low back as the leg comes up. One more. Reaching the leg up towards the ceiling, pointing the toe, we're going to stir the pot. We're going to work counterclockwise. Nice and smooth. Pressing into the mat with your hips and shoulder blades as you draw the ribs and abs in. Keeping the core tight. Finding that circular motion of the leg and the hip. And we switch. Working our clockwise circles. Straight and long with the leg. Last one. And we'll bend the knee. Place the foot back to the mat. Bring the soles of the feet together. And let the knees fall out to the side. Opening out into that butterfly stretch. Letting everything stretch and fall into the floor. Two more breaths. We'll slowly unwind out of that butterfly pose. Resetting the legs with knees bent and feet flat to the mat, arms nice and long down by your side to reset the spine. We'll do a couple pelvic tilts to decompress the low back. Exhale to tilt the hips back, finding that flexion, that C curve, that scooping. And one more. Knees come to tabletop. We return to our chest lift with hands resting on either side of the knees and into our double leg stretch. Once we've braced and set on that inhale, arms and legs move away from your center line. Arms circle around. Back as the knees bend and return to tabletop. Finding that deep fold, that nice bend at the midribs. Especially as the arms go overhead, folding deeper. Last two. And we'll reset the spine back to the mat, drawing the knees in, holding for a breath. And we'll bring our feet down. Arms nice and long down by your side. Feet and legs are lined up with your sit bones. We're going to work our neutral spine shoulder bridge, taking the articulation out of the back. We'll press through the feet, engage the glutes, feel the hamstrings fire up the back of the legs as the ribs and abs knit in to lift the hips high, sending the knees forward, hinging at the ankle. Holding for a breath or two, and then slow to reset. Tighten up into the rib cage to keep the mid back from arching and the ribs from flaring. Nice and smooth, working through the bridges. Last one. We'll bring our legs to tabletop, hug through inner thigh. Arms reach up overhead, palms up towards the ceiling. We're going to add our single leg extensions to our chest lifts. On the exhale, arms flow forward. We lift the head, neck, and chest. We'll reach strong and long with the right, and then switch to the left. Draw the legs to tabletop, and upper body resets to the mat. Exhale to fold and lift. Strong through that mid-rib fold, we reach long, stretching out over the mat, switching from leg to leg, and reset. Keeping the core tight, especially as you reset to the mat. One more each leg. And we'll reset the upper body. Arms reach up overhead, stretching long across the mat. We'll place our right foot down to the mat, heel in line with the sit bone, and arms will come down to the side of the body, pressing the shoulder blades flat against the mat, holding that left leg in tabletop. We work into our single leg bridge. We exhale to lift, pressing the hips up, sending the knee forward, and slow to lower. Strong in that right foot, right leg and hip, drawing the abdominals in, keeping the back strong. One more. Resetting the spine, we switch legs. Left foot and heel to the mat in line with the sit bone, and right leg floats to tabletop. Find that alignment of the legs. And on the exhale, we lift and bridge. One more. And slow to lower down. Legs to tabletop, hugging through inner thigh. Reset the back as needed. And arms reach back up overhead, palms towards the ceiling. As we lift the chest, we send the legs together, forward out over the mat with a nice high chest lift. Slow to reset to the mat. And last two. Shoulders and head reset to the mat. We'll bring our feet to the mat once again, going to that small V position. Heels are pressing together as the toes and the knees angle out towards a shoulder position, a shoulder width position. And we're going to work into our pelvic curl. So we're going to add in the articulation of the spine, reaching the arms long. We exhale to tilt the hips back. Imprint to then scoop and lift, keeping the ribs knitted in. We lift the hips, sending the knees forward towards the toes. And on the next exhale, we curl down. Piece by piece, vertebra by vertebra, rolling along the spine, one segment at a time. Finding that flow in the spine, moving each little piece. One more. Shoulders are still drawing down and back. Bringing the legs to tabletop. Drawing through inner thighs, knees are pressing together. We reach the arms back overhead, palms up towards the ceiling, and on the exhale, we fold at the mid-ribs to lift the head, neck, and chest, and we hold. Begin to work our pulses of the arm at the shoulder, nice and smooth. Upper body is still and stable in this lifted, flexed position at the mid-ribs. Holding strong, and we'll start to add the legs. Right leg reaches out, and we hold. Switching legs. Pulsing strong with the arms, we return the legs to tabletop. And both legs reach out. Nice and strong with the pulses, stretching the arms and the legs long. Last 10 pulses. Knees draw in. Hug knees to chest, roll back to the mat. Stretching the spine long. And we'll return our feet to the mat, back to that small V position. Arms reach long to the side. Moving through the ankle joint, we'll lift the heels up as they press together and slow to lower down. Finding that movement in the ankle, engaging the calves, the back of the lower leg as the heels lift. We'll lift and hold on our next one and into our shoulder bridge. We'll tilt the hips back, imprint, and roll along the spine as we scoop and lift, bringing the hips up, keeping the heels lifted as they press and squeeze together. And we curl and roll down. Try to keep the heels up and lifted as they press together. As we work back up into our articulated shoulder bridge. And last two. Resetting out of that high heeled, turned out position, we'll stretch the legs nice and long across the mat, pointing the toes as we squeeze in our thighs and legs together. Arms reach up overhead, palms faced in, and we inhale. Arms glide forward. We lift the head, neck, and chest, and we exhale to fold at the midribs, drawing the abdominals up and in as we curl and roll up off the mat, and reaching long forward out over the legs. Lengthening through the neck, crown of the head stretches forward towards the toes as we draw the abdominals in deeper towards the spine. And exhale, tilt back. Dropping the shoulders down, curling along the spine piece by piece. Rolling all the way back. Arms are reaching overhead as we're drawing the rib cage in. And arms glide forward. Bringing chin to chest, folding deep at the midribs. Finding that C curve as we curl and roll up. And we reach out long over the legs. And exhale, curl back. Piece by piece. Feeling that even weight from hip to hip and along the back as we reset to the mat to ensure we're not twisting to either side. We'll curl and restack. Sitting up nice and tall and long. We'll sit back and take our feet and our legs to mat width apart. Ankles are flexed to allow the top of the foot to pull back towards the shin. Sitting up long and tall out of the sit bones. We'll reach our arms forward, stack the spine long, and we'll bring chin to chest. Folding at the midribs, reaching forward, reaching long through the legs, taking hold of the leg or the foot, and stretching deep through the back of the leg, up the spine as we stretch forward. Lengthening the legs, lengthening the spine. One more breath. And then curl and restack. Sitting up nice and tall and long. We'll bring our feet to our butterfly pose. Sitting and stretching towards the ceiling. We'll hinge forward at the hip, allowing the knees to fall out to the floor. And we'll sit up and sit tall. Dropping the shoulders down, we'll bring our right ear towards our right shoulder. Flexing to the side, just at the neck. And back to center. Head tips left. Keeping the shoulders squared and dropped as you move the head to the side. And one more each side. Not allowing the body to tip or the shoulders to lift as you move the head and the neck to the side. Last one to the left. Back to center and rest. All right, guys. Great work today.